Hi, it's Maija here, and I don't know if you know this, but I hadn't yet wrapped up my December reads and receipts, so it's the final monthly reads and receipts. It's time to put 2020 behind us. So in these videos, I go through what I read, my TBR count, and how I'm doing with my reading challenges. I read a lot of stuff from my birthday book haul, so if you watch that, I'm going to review a lot of them in this video. So my TBR count at the start of the month was 63 books. And let's start with the reads. The first book that I finished was Babel 17 by Samuel R. Delany, and this is an old ebook and it's a science fiction classic which I was reading for a book club very, very late. Linguistic genius and poet Ridra Wong is given a mission to translate an alien language, and of course this calls for an interstellar mission. I am very interested in linguistics, and I found that part of the book was really interesting about how different languages affect our thought processes and stuff like that. Also, the future world that this is set in felt very alive. I liked following Rudra gather her spaceship crew in the beginning. They were all very interesting characters, especially I liked the navigators. So the beginning was very fast going and promising, but I found part 3, Jebel Tariq, boring because it introduced some new characters who I didn't care about. I have to mention that this book has some dated language, like calling people Oriental or using the M word for a person with dwarfism. I gave this book 3.5 stars. The linguistic parts were very interesting. Next, I read Moontangled by Stephanie Burgis. This was an owned ebook and it's a fantasy of manners romance novella. It's set in the Harwood spellbook series and it's book 2.5, I guess, so it's shorter than books 1 and 2. This one is about a couple who has featured in the background of the previous stories, so Juliana Banks and Caroline Fennell, and it's quite short. It's set during one night at Thornfell College, which is this college of studying magic. This one uses the let's split them apart trope, which I'm not a big fan of. It's where you pick an established couple and then you split them apart at the beginning of a story for plot reasons, for some drama, and it happens to be a misunderstanding that's quite easy, would have been quite easy to solve. So this series, I think, uses this a lot, that there's a misunderstanding. It's a bit repetitive inside the series, and this one did seem especially an easily solvable one. But I did like the magic and the fae. I gave this one 2.5 stars. Then I read the next one in this series, Frostgilded by Stephanie Burgis, and it's an owned ebook. It's a fancy of manners romance novelette this time, so it's even shorter. And I got this in my birthday haul. It's the third book. It's very short. It's like 29 pages, and it says that it's an epilogue. So I think it's the final book in this series, and there's no more to come. It focuses on Cassandra Harwood, who is the main character in this series, and it again takes place during one night at Thornfell College. This time it's the winter solstice. I don't have much to say about this. It was very short, and it features all of the couples that have featured in the novella series previously. I gave this one 3 stars. The first novella was my favorite in the series. Then I went on to another fantasy of manners romance novella, and that is Tea and Sympathetic Magic by Tansy Rayner Roberts. And this is an owned ebook that I got in my birthday haul, and it's the first in the Teacup Magic series. This one follows Mnemosyne Seaborn, who tries to avoid getting married. It's the season, there's a lot of parties, there's like tea, croquet, and spellcracking. So it's a Regency romance feel in a fantasy world. This one was a fun, short adventure, very whimsical. I liked the main character and I gave it 3 stars, and went on to read The Frost Fair Affair by Tansy Rayner Roberts, the second Teacup Magic series book. Once again, I bought this as an ebook in my birthday haul. It's a fantasy of manners romance novella. So this one is longer and more serious than the first. It has a theme of women's rights, and it has a bigger plot with like political plots in it, but it also is a fun adventure. And this one is set like during winter in the city, which I found a really interesting setting. There's like this snow fair and everything, the Frost Fair Affair. So I found that to be a really good setting, and I recommend both of these novellas for a fun afternoon. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Then from the library, I read a fantasy novella called Drowned Country by Emily Tesh, and this is the second book in the Green Hollow duology that was started with Silver in the Wood. And this one was not as good as the first one. It was not as atmospheric. It also used a trope that I don't like. And in the beginning, I won't say what it is, in case it would be a spoiler. This one like had a trope that I didn't like. Also, the ending was a bit abrupt, but I really liked the main plot. It had a lot of fae stuff this time, and there was a new character who I really enjoyed. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. I gave the first one 4 stars, and I liked that one more. This one, despite that trope that I don't like, I like the plot. And I still do like Henry. And then I finished Dragons of Spring Dawning by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman, the final book in the Dragonlance Chronicles. I read it as an owned English ebook, but I'm holding up my old Finnish copy. And this is a reread. It's a high fantasy series. I've talked about the 2 previous books in previous videos. This one was my favorite out of the Chronicles. It started very strong. We learn a lot of interesting stuff, like stuff about the test in the Tower of High Sorcery, and it has a lot of Raistlin. And my reactions were basically, Raistlin, classic. And then, no Raistlin? Suddenly more boring. Am I that petty? I was like, I'm so enjoying this book. This is the best book of the series. And then I suddenly felt like I wasn't enjoying it that much anymore. I found it a bit boring. And I just realized that it's because Raistlin wasn't on screen. There were times when Raistlin wasn't there, and then I wasn't that interested. So yeah, I was that petty. But I also didn't like the Lorana must be saved part, so Lorana was completely sidelined for the rest of the book, and I didn't care for that. But then the book became again magically better. What happened? Raistlin came back. Suddenly a 100% better book. I gave it 4.5 stars. Sue me. So now we're moving on to the birthday comics that I bought in my birthday haul, so I read all of those. I didn't have as great a success with them as I did with the previous comics that I bought from Shortbox. So Homunculus by Joe Sparrow I would really recommend. It's a science fiction comic. I gave it 5 stars, I think. Also Beneath the Dead Oak Tree by Emily Carroll, another 5 stars. It's a horror comic. And then a 4-star one is What Is Left by Rosemary Valero O'Connell, which is also available from her collection that I can't remember the name right now, but I'll put it on screen. Don't Go Without Me. That was it. So these 3 I really recommend. But let's move on to the ones that I read in December. I read Sobek by James Stokoe, and this one was fun. It's about this lazy and chill crocodile god who is asked to come help his worshippers in this city that has been taken over by Set, and Sobek has to go interfere. So it was quite a simple story with comedy drawn from Sobek's way of speech, like saying "What's up, guys?" and stuff like that to his followers when everyone else was more serious. So this one has beautiful scenery, very beautiful, but I didn't care for the people drawings. I wasn't that big of a fan of the people. It was fun, but it's quite a simple story. I gave it 2.5 stars. Then I read this, a smaller comic, and this is Interim by Allissa-chan. And this is quite a mysterious comic about this person and this raven who are trapped in this ever-shifting city, and they are trying to find their way out. And it looks beautiful and went over my head. I gave it 3 stars. Then I read the last one of my birthday comics, and that one is Cry Wolf Girl by Ariel Ries, and this is about mental health stuff. And I was trying to stay away from mental health metaphor comics for reasons, so that is why this was a miss for me. I didn't know that this was one. It's a good comic and the art is really beautiful, so I can appreciate that part. So if you are looking for a comic that focuses on mental health through a metaphor, check this one out. Then from the library I read the contemporary comedy manga The Way of the House Husband Volume 1 by Kousuke Oono, and this is about a former yakuza who is now a house husband to a career woman, and that's it. That's the manga. We follow everyday struggles like cleaning house or going to a sale, with the added dramatic flair that comes from contrasting this to all the yakuza stuff. And it's pretty funny, even though it basically has that one joke. The art is good. The humor comes from people finding him scary doing everyday stuff, or other yakuza running into him and trying to figure out what's going on. I always seem to prefer like situational comedy as a live action series or anime, and not as a comedy manga. I gave this one 3 stars. I don't know if I will continue with this. I also read the first volume of another manga series, and this one is Requiem of the Rose King by Aya Kanno. So this is a manga retelling of the War of the Roses. I picked it up because of that premise and this cover. So in this one, Richard III, the main character, is intersex, and they see the ghost of Joan of Arc talking to them, and also they have some trouble with this, like getting their mother's acceptance and gaining their place. They really have a lot of ambition and they're very angry. And I was really looking forward to this, but I found it quite laborious to read. All the historical stuff, I know a lot of the characters. I've seen different adaptations of the Shakespeare plays around this time, but I didn't really enjoy reading this, so I don't think I will continue. I gave it like 2.5 stars. Finally, I read Valkoinen, karhu ja Joulutähti by Leena Laulajainen and Kristiina Louhi. So this is an old book. It's a reread. This is my old book from childhood, and this is basically an advent calendar type of book. It has 24 chapters and you're supposed to read one per day until Christmas Eve. This is about a Yule bear looking for the missing Yule star. So this is the white bear and the Yule star. I say Yule because the word Yule sounds more like the Finnish word joulu, so they share the same etymology, so that's why I use that instead of Christmas. This was also shown as an advent calendar on TV when I was little, so I can still remember one of the songs that was used in it. It has the lyrics and I could sing it in my head when I read this. So I had a fun time reading this chapter a day in December. I'm not going to give it a star rating. So those were all the reads. So let's move on to the receipts, which you might already know about if you have seen my yearly wrap up. But I didn't make progress in 10 books I want to read in 2020 list. I did complete the reread challenge with Dragons of Spring Dawning. I completed a challenge. I did not read the TBR challenges, so I didn't complete that one. So that was all the challenges, and I have a bit of a haul. Apart from the stuff that I showed you in my birthday book haul, I did also buy The Girl from the Other Side Volume 9 by Nagabe, which is this dark fairy tale fantasy manga, and I just forgot to show this. And then I also bought on sale Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty, which is the third book in the Daivabad trilogy. I haven't even read the first one. I own the first one as a physical copy, and then I have the second and third one as ebooks from sales, so I've just picked them up when they have been on sale. But now for the stats. In December, I read 13 books. That was 1,628 pages. I read on average 53 pages a day and took on average 6 days to read a book. And my current physical TBR number and the final number for the year is 63 books. If you can remember, I took January off, and when I started reads and receipts in February, my TBR count was 71. So I gotten from 71 to 63. So this was my final 2020 reads and receipts video. I read a lot of comics and a lot of novellas. I am now moving on to the quarterly reads and receipts, and I hope I make some progress with my TBR count in 2021. But that's all from me for now, and I'll see you in my next video.